Now, there are some subsets that people talk about a lot. Basically, I think there are four types of narcissism: the classic, malignant, communal, and covert. But people also talk about the hypervigilant, the overt, the sexual, the oblivious. There are different categories that are put on them, but I tend to stick with the big four: the classic, the malignant, the covert, and the communal. I want to talk about covert. I want to do a deep dive on this. Now, the covert narcissist, these folks are much more subtle than the classic narcissist. They're not as brash. They're not as loud. They're not as overt about what they want. But make no mistake, just like the classic narcissist, the covert narcissist wants the same things, and they have the same traits and characteristics. They do have grandiose thoughts. They do have a need for admiration. They are superficial. They do lack empathy. They have trouble forming attachments and bonds with other people. They have all the same traits and characteristics. They just express them more subtly. So you have to be real careful to set up boundaries and protect yourself from these people, even though they're not quite as obvious. Just like the classic narcissist, they use the vicious tools of gaslighting. It's a hard thing to argue with a narcissist because they're going to gaslight you. You can talk to them and you're going to wind up thinking you're the one that's wrong because they're going to tell you, hey, it's not me, you're crazy. It's not me, it's you. I'm not mad. I'm just passionate. It's you being too sensitive. You're just insecure. You need help. I was just joking. Don't be so sensitive. That's just what you heard. That's not what I meant. By the time you get through getting gaslit by a narcissist, you're going to be doubting your own damn name. You don't want to argue with a narcissist because they are relentless and they will stay with it forever and a day before they ever cave in, and it's just not worth it. So setting boundaries with a narcissist in your life is very, very important. And I'm going to talk about 5 things you need to do to protect yourself in a little while. But let's do a deep dive on the covert narcissist. Covert narcissists have all the traits, characteristics, and symptoms, but they express them or display them in subtle ways. Now, this has really been talked about and discovered pretty much in the current century, since the turn of the century. And there have been some experts that have really talked about this and done a lot of raising of awareness about this. Researchers like Campbell and Pincus, some of these researchers have done a great job saying not all narcissists are the same. They don't all express it the same, and they've recognized this covert narcissism, and I think they've done a great service by identifying these people. Whereas the classic narcissist comes across as bold and brash and loud, and they're just out there beating the drum, these people tend to be more depressed. They come across as victimized. They're sullen and sad. I like to call them backdoor narcissists in my own mind. And they take on this victim role where they're downtrodden. Now, make no mistake, they still think they're the smartest person in the room, but what they're going to tell you is, hey, listen, I'm special, but nobody gets me. If they did, I would be a star. Like, hey, I went to Princeton. I got the big credentials, but nobody cares. Like, I'm overlooked. I'm a victim. They don't get out there and put it on the line. They'll tell you, I'm saving myself for management. I can't tell you how many times I've had parents on the show with mooching kids that are 30 years old, living off of mama down in the basement, sleeping until 2 or 3 in the afternoon, staying up playing video games till 4 in the morning, and I say, "You're able-bodied. Why don't you get off your butt and get a job?" Well, that's beneath me. I'm better than that. I'm not going to go to some training class at McDonald's and let them tell me how to make fries. I should be managing that McDonald's. They actually believe they're too good to get out there and work. They've convinced themselves of that. Their arrogance is so strong that they're just saying, I have it all. I've just never been recognized. Now, they're outwardly self-effacing, and they do that in a way of what I call, well, they have a whole bunch of techniques, but one of them I call the humble brag. The humble brag is something they say that's ostensibly modest, or it seems self-deprecating, but the actual intent is to draw attention to themselves and fish for compliments like, "Oh, I look terrible without any makeup on." They're expecting people to say, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? You don't have any makeup on? You look great." It's a humble brag. They think they look great. So there's false humility disguised as self-deprecating when they're really bragging on the fact that they want you to pay attention to how good they look without makeup. Guys do it all the time. I mean, they'll say, "Oh, I haven't worked out in 6 months. I can't believe that this is going to kill me." And then they get out there and run really fast or jump really high or whatever because they've been working out secretly and haven't told anybody about it. But these people are generally very self-absorbed and they're sullen. They think the world owes them a living. And they're inept at relationships. They're inept at intimacy. They spend a lot of time blaming and shaming. They play the but-for game. But for the world having it in for me, I would be a huge success. But for you being lucky, I would have your job. But for you having a wealthy family, but for you having a powerful father, I would be doing better than you. They play the victim. And there's never any reciprocity with these people. It's always one way. They will suck you dry. In this world, there's a lot of ways you can divide people up. One way is there are givers and there are takers. These people are takers. Because remember, they have every characteristic of the classic narcissist. They have no empathy. They don't care what you think. They don't care what you feel. They don't care what you need. They will take what they can get from you. And if you fall down and break your leg, they will step right over you if it serves their purpose. They have a very fragile sense of self. They never give any compliments because that would be at their expense. If they gave you a serious compliment, a sincere compliment, if they said, "Hey, you really did a fine job today. That speech you gave was really genuine, it was authentic, and it inspired the whole group." They could never give you that compliment because they would see that as at their expense. Covert narcissist parents, for example, we'll talk more about this later, but covert narcissist parents oftentimes cannot be happy for their children's successes because they compare themselves to their own children. I have said before that my father died when I was in my 40s. Now, I wasn't a perfect kid. I certainly wasn't a perfect young adult. I certainly wasn't a perfect adult, but I think in the general scheme of things, I did okay. That's not a humble brag. I'm saying that in the grand scheme of things, I think I did okay. I never got any felony arrest. I didn't do drugs or alcohol. I completed college. I went on a scholarship to school, to a Division I school. I got married. I was a responsible father. I got a PhD. I graduated #1 in my class. I was very successful. I was good to my mother. I mean, I think I was a pretty good citizen. And I achieved some, I think, reasonably lofty goals. Not one time in the 43 or 4 years that I was alive did he ever say, I'm proud of you. Now, why not? Because I think he was a covert narcissist. He needed admiration, and anything that took attention away from him and came on to me was at his expense. He couldn't do it. He couldn't give me a compliment. He couldn't tell me he was proud of me. He couldn't acknowledge me because he felt like that was at his expense and he couldn't afford to do it. That's what I mean when I say these people have a fragile sense of self. They can't give compliments. Now, they won't confront you about it. They will be passive aggressive about it. But it's just as damaging. See, an aggressive person will tell you, hey, I think you're an idiot. I think you got blind ass lucky and fell into this job and you don't deserve it. A covert narcissist will not do that. They will not get in your face and tell you what they think. What they will do is snipe at you indirectly and or behind your back. They will say things like, oh, must be nice. What must be nice? Well, must be nice to grow up with a family where they set everything up for you. I mean, must be nice that your dad knows the boss. Must be nice to fall into this job. I guess your dad was a legacy at Harvard, so that made it easy to get it. I mean, must be nice. I mean, it's not like he's saying it's unfair. He's just saying it must be nice. He's raging inside because he thinks the world owes him a living to the point that he's actually paranoid about it. You know, she may actually think the world is out to get her, but rather than say that, it's just like, yeah, lucky you, must be nice.